There are many stories about the sacrifice and pain men endured in World War II, but what is often missing are the stories from those who stayed behind. In the following story, Josephine Huss tells me how, as a young girl, she shared in the war effort. She was not on the front lines like her brothers, but her duty was to pray for them every day with her mother at church. She shared in the jubilation when the war ended, but she also shared the pain her brother George carried with him years after he returned.
The war ended. I can still remember that day being so happy. It was a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and we all went downtown in St. Paul. We lived behind the Capitol there in Sherburne. It was such a joyous thing. My mother was so happy, and my little neighbor girl and I walked downtown with her, and they were hanging off of the lamppost. Just a crowd like you'd never seen in downtown before. Just everybody happy. But Mike came home before he did, and I can remember it was different because they'd come home on the train, like by themselves. It wasn't like a troop train, and you'd see them walking home, like they took the streetcar from the depot, and nobody knew that when they were coming, and I don't think we even had a car. And I remember when George came home, John and Mike were kind of in the yard on Park Street there, and George, I may be making this up, but it's something like this happened, and they kind of grabbed each other and started punching each other, and gee, these son of a bitch. Just saying all these things that they loved each other, but it came out in those kind of words, What the hell are you doing? What were you doing in the war? Why didn't you stay home or whatever? To George especially, But it was a happy, happy time. We went to a funeral, and I said to George, I says, we were pretty close, he and I. He's the closest to me. He's 5 years older. And I says, you never talked much about your service, because he was on Okinawa and all them really bloody places. Not Iwo Jima, that's the one the story's about that they made recently. But I remember he never talked about it. And I know what he must have seen, but sometimes my other brothers were kind of talkative and talk about different little things that happened to them, funny and sad in the service. But George says, he says, I'll tell you this, he says, and don't ever ask me again. This is making me cry. He says, I saw two of my best friends blown right on either side of me to bits. And he says, like you're left standing. And he says, you don't ever forget that. And I don't want to talk about this ever again. So you just never bring it up. Because he was just a kid. He came home when he wasn't even 20 years old yet. He'd been through the war and come back.